Hello everyone! Today I'm going to be doing an unhaul. So there were two things that kind of inspired this unhaul. One is that I am simply running out of space on my bookshelves, and I definitely know that I would rather make room for new books or books that I know I already love and just haven't acquired yet, rather than keep books that I will never touch again. And two, because I really want to get my physical TBR down. It's not that large. To most people on BookTube, it's incredibly small. I have like 20 books on my physical TBR. But it really bothers me when I own a book for so many years and haven't read it yet. And so I just needed to think hard on it and finally make a decision of like, do I actually want to read this? Or should I just give it up? So I've been wanting to make this video for a while now, but I wanted to make sure that I knew where the books were going, or I could just have a place for them to go when I'm unhauling them. But when quarantine hit, that kind of took all of my resources away because libraries are no longer accepting physical donations, at least near me. But it's been many months now and quarantine is still a thing, so I figured I would just say what books I'm going to unhaul and they'll just live in a pile next to my desk for the foreseeable future. So the first kind of group of books I have are ARCs I got from BookCon in 2014. Yes, that means these are 6 years old now. And they are Alex by Pierre Lemart. I think that's how you say that. The Stories We Tell by Patty Callahan Henry. War Dogs by Greg Bear. The Love Affairs of Nathaniel P. by Adele Waldman, and The Iron Trial by Cassandra Clare and Holly Black. With the exception of The Iron Trial, all of those books are books I would really never gravitate towards. You may be asking then, why did I pick them up at BookCon? And let me just say that BookCon in 2014 was different than BookCon now. Back then, they just gave out everything for free. People were just handing out books. I think it's because BookCon wasn't as popular, but me being an excited 14-year-old just took whatever everybody handed out. The only one of these that I was consider keeping is The Iron Trial, but I've kind of heard mixed things about the series, and especially about the later books, how they're not as good as people wanted them to be, and I just don't really care to read them. I'm also unhauling Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, and oh shoot, okay. I'm also unhauling Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo and Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. And these are just because I have duplicate copies of them. Mistborn is because I bought the box set of the British covers and they're much prettier than this US edition. And for Shadow and Bone, I'm actually pretty sad about because I really like this cover, but I ended up buying the box set of the paperback versions that look like this, and I annotated them, so I can't get rid of these. And for this series in particular, I don't really feel like owning multiple versions of the book. Six of Crows, on the other hand, I want those special editions real bad. Then we have some books that I acquired as a kid and don't really care to read, which is the theme of this video apparently. We have Loser by Jerry Spinelli, A Child Called It by Dave Peltzer, Stay Where You Are and Then Leave by John Boyne, Mars Year One Marooned by Brad Strickland and Thomas E. Fuller, Hotel for Dogs, Book 7 in the Spirit Animals series by Marie Lu. I didn't realize that was the Marie Lu. That's kind of funny. And those books I didn't read, but these I'd have. And one is Darkest Age, The Book of the Sword by A.J. Lake. This is kind of a funny story. I do remember liking it, but also it's the second book in a series, and I don't know how I read this without reading the first one. Then we have what I believe is called the Radiant series by Alison Noel. You might know Alison Noel as the author of Evermore, which is one of those Twilight-esque books that came out in the 2000s. And this is like a spin-off series, a spin-off middle grade series, because that other series was YA, about that character's younger sister who died in that series, and in this series we're following her in the afterlife. This one kind of hurts a little bit because I do have some memories associated with this and the time that I read it, but I also remember feeling pretty apathetic to the story itself at the time. And so there's just no reason for me to keep it, and maybe someone else will like it who picks it up. So now we're going to get into more well-known titles. The first one is Alex Rider's Stormbreaker by Anthony Horowitz. This was not really a very popular series on BookTube, but I think it was pretty popular in the early 2000s. They even made a movie of it with Alex Pettyfer. And I read it and I liked it, but it's part of like a 10-book series and I just don't want to read it. Then we have Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. So I bought this book a few years ago because I remembered in the beginning of BookTube, like in 2012, 2013, people were raving about this book. It was on like everybody's favorite book of the year list. And so when the movie was coming out, I was like, hey, maybe I should read this finally. But the movie has since come out and I don't have any more inclination to read it. I also think this isn't something that I would necessarily really enjoy per se. Because in a lot of reviews, people cite the nostalgia factor, like the fact that there's so many 80s references in this book, as to something that they enjoyed about the book. And 80s culture is not something that I know too much about, nor am too invested in. And I've also heard some mixed things about the author and his portrayal of women. And so yeah, that all just adds up to like, I don't really want this anymore. Then we have If I Stay by Gail Foreman. I actually didn't hate this book. I think I gave it around 3 stars. It was fine. I just remember how people were saying how this was a very emotional story and it made them cry and it moved them. And I was pretty apathetic towards it. It wasn't bad, I just didn't understand what all the hype was about. But I hope that someone else who eventually gets this book enjoys it a little bit more. The next book I'm unhauling is Eleanor and Park by Rowell. This is definitely a book I read because of BookTube hype, and I did enjoy it at the time, but similar to If I Stay, just not to the extent that other people were seemingly enjoying it. But what pushed me to finally unhaul it was the criticisms aimed at it about the Korean representation. I was pretty young when I read this and didn't understand all of the nuances that went into why this book is problematic, but since then I have watched more reviews and listened to more people speak on it. And I will link those sources down below if you also want to get more in-depth reasons about why this book is harmful and problematic. And yeah, I would just rather the space on my shelf go to another book. Then I have Delirium by Lauren Oliver. I actually meant to unhaul this many years ago because I didn't even really like it at the time that I read it. Pretty sure I gave it 3 stars, but might have given it lower if I read it now. Just nothing really about the world, like the dystopian society she created, or the characters or the plot really intrigued me. But I probably would have continued with the series at the time that I read it, which was like many years ago, had not there been massively mixed reviews about the last book. And because I was apathetic about this one, I didn't really feel like devoting any more time to this series if it was going to be a lukewarm ending anyway. So now I'm finally getting rid of it. And now the ones that I really had to contemplate, but I did come around to a decision about getting rid of. And the first one of that is the Selection trilogy by Kira Cass. I guess it's not really a trilogy anymore because there is a continuation, but I would consider these like their own trilogy. And this is exactly the case where I don't feel too much attachment to the series in general, like to the story. I remember finding them very entertaining and I read them really quickly, but I couldn't stand the characters, even how the plot went down. But I have so many memories associated with this series, and specifically seeing it on my shelf because I had this one dystopian shelf where I bought all these dystopian series around the same time, and so it just feels kind of weird not having that series there. But in reality, it's really just taking space, and I would much rather put more books that I love dearly in their place instead, and so I just have to bite the bullet and get rid of them. But even though that pains me because of nostalgia, I can solidly say that I should get rid of them. But this next series, I'm still a little bit conflicted though on the side of unhauling, hence why they're in this video. And that's the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series. I read the first one back when it was really popular, whenever that was, around 2012. And I did really like them, and I bought Hollow City when it came out. This copy is even signed, which makes me feel extra guilty. And I also bought Library of Souls when it came out because at the time I always finished series, so I just assumed that even if it took me a while, I would get to it. But it's been many years. I believe that Hollow City came out in 2014. And every year I'm like, this is a series, I'm gonna read it this year, and every year I don't. I think if Ransom Riggs hadn't continued the series, I might have read it. I don't know why, something in me, when he released more books, made me not want to read them anymore. Like I was like, no, that's just too much. I could deal with 3, but more? You're asking too much of me. And also for some reason, I rewatched my books I want to read in 2019 video. And in it, I said I wanted to read the Miss Peregrine's books. And I also said in that video that if I didn't read the books that I owned that I said I would read in that video, by the end of the year that I would unhaul them. I guess I have to listen to myself and just get rid of them. So for the books that are pretty popular and still in good condition, I'm gonna try to see if I can sell them. I think Depop is a really popular platform people use for that. I haven't really looked into too much about how to do that, but if I figure it out, I will leave it in the description. And for the rest of them, I'm just gonna give to the library. Except for the ARCs, don't really know what I'm supposed to do with the ARCs. When I tried looking online, they just said either give them away to like a person or recycle them. So we'll see what I figure out about that. So I just quickly counted, and that's a total of 21 books that I'm unhauling, which is kind of a lot. I'm kind of proud of myself. for not sticking to sentimental value and keeping things that I don't need. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!